test goals, expand content and features. This is what I love about, they're geniuses. Honestly, Steven and the development team are geniuses. Just be intentionally vague and imply a lot more than you're going to be able to deliver, and they will just throw money at you. You know what I mean? Yeah, we're just going to expand content and features. Well, what the fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? They can very easily deliver on that. They don't have to worry about false advertising, but people can wish for the world. You know what I mean? I want to be clear, even though I rib Ashes a lot for being like a complete scam, we all hope that it's going to be an amazing game. We're all hoping that Ashes, the scope of the game and what they're promising is incredible. Nobody doesn't want Ashes to succeed. We just sincerely doubt that it's ever going to release with all of this stuff, all these promises. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, I don't know, man. I just feel like they can't deliver on all this stuff unless they give it to, they could deliver our grandkids all of these things, right? And so you consider it more of a long-term investment, if you will. You know, you're not going to play it, but like, it's like one of those things, when you die, your kids inherit this copium and the ability to play this game that their parents thought they were going to love so much. And it gives them that nostalgia.
We're just about to get our hands on Ashes of Creation. Now, mind you, the game isn't fully releasing into 1.0 or anything. Far from it. It's still Alpha 2 to be exact. But for all intents and purposes, launching or not, Ashes is basically here, because starting in a few days, the game will be publicly available with no NDA and holding playtest each and every single week. This begins with 3-day weekend tests.
They're also, this is never going to end. I'm fairly certain they've said multiple times the Alpha 2 is going to go all the way up until launch. So most of us would call that a live service game. In Ashes of Creation's standpoint, they call that an alpha. That way people can cope about how bad it is.
Beginning this Friday, followed by phase 2 when the servers will be up and running about 5 days every week, and then come phase 3 in a few months from now, they'll be up 24/7, at which point might as well be like an early access launch, not technically, but in the sense that if...
There it is, man. I'm telling you, let me get some water real quick. Force Gaming telling it how it is, bro. It's just launching.
If you wanted to play Ashes of Creation every waking hour of your life, you will absolutely be able to pay money in order to do so. Now, I've not really covered this game at all in the past couple of years, and if you're wondering why, well, frankly, it's because I've got a bit of Kickstarter MMO fatigue. I have grown tired of spending time and energy thinking about games that are still 5+ years away, and it doesn't help that pretty much every crowdfunded MMO I have ever followed hasn't turned out very well, either launching and failing or perpetually stuck in development hell. I am still legitimately upset about Crowfall, like I had so much hope for that game. Anyway, Ashes of Creation is hoping themselves to lift this Kickstarter MMO.
They should give up on this game? Absolutely not. This game is providing jobs to over like 70 Americans. Like, this is like, they're literally funding people's entire lives. You know what I mean? Steven is doing the Lord's work, and you guys are helping other people survive without literally having to do anything or be accountable at all for the quality of their work. I mean, truly, it's remarkable, you know?
Curse and be the first one of these games that doesn't flop. And since we'll be playing it in just a...
How many people are watching? I mean, how many people are working on Ashes of Creation? How many people are on the development team for Ashes of Creation? Let me see. Oh my God. 120 people. Guys, 120 people. 8 years. And 120 people. This is not some small indie game studio making this thing. This is a new studio with 120 developers. I think that's more than BDO, bro. Like, what?
Months.
Couple of days, I just wanted to catch up on how things were going. So I started looking up the latest updates in the game, reading blog posts, watching videos and discussions, and then to my...
PA has 1,400 employees. Bungie has 1,400 employees. Yes, but Pluribus is 1,400 employees. How many of them are actively involved in the development process of the game? Okay, and how many were actively involved in the creation of the game? 7 years. How many developers did BDO have? This is a good question. How many developers did BDO or Lost Ark? Would it be a good one? World of Warcraft? How many developers did they have while they were developing the game? You know what I mean?
By surprise, just a few days ago, they lifted
I just want to remember everyone that Blue is bald.
Okay, thanks.
Who's taken part in recent closed alpha tests, of which there have been a few for the past few months, they can now share their thoughts. And, well, those thoughts have been a bit of a mixed bag. Surprise, surprise. So for starters, we've got quite a few videos from the Ashes of Creation enthusiast out there. I'm talking about the content creators who have channels dedicated mostly or exclusively to this game. On average, their impressions have been fairly positive. On the list of positives and good stuff, it includes the combat, which does seem...
Yeah, so, yeah, Chad, I would agree. So, like, the problem is, if this was releasing today, it had no bugs, and this is what the game looked like, it already looks kind of dated. You know what I mean? It's still passable. It's still solid graphics. I would still play it, right? It's not like RuneScape or anything, or ArcH, or any of that stuff. But, like, guys, we're 8 years in, and I don't, like, they're going to have to update to Unreal Engine 6 or 7 by this point. Like, it's going to take at least another 5 years, right? In 5 years, is this going to look good? That's what you should be asking yourself, right?
Seem to be in a good place with a solid foundation. The game, if you don't recall, is using a hybrid system, a mix of action and tab target, something akin to like a Guild Wars 2 or Throne and Liberty. Most of the feedback that I've seen has said that the action feels better on the melee classes.
Just resubscribed for 2 months. Longest relationship I've been on.
Welcome back for 2 months, Baldy. Appreciate you. That's right. You don't need women, okay? You don't need sex, okay? Black Desert is not going to grind itself, all right? Throne and Liberty, that world boss isn't going to kill itself, all right? You tell that woman that the sex can wait, all right? You send her outside. You don't need it. Just keep being a degen.
Is like the tank.
Does it look better than Throne and Liberty? I think that the graphics sometimes do look better than TNL, or at least on par, right? Like the dragon and stuff, they look really good. I say they're.
If you got sex, you are out of the guild.
But like, yeah, true. But the UI is bad. The UI is really bad.
Cheer Dex 100. I'm getting high on Blue Squadron content.
Thanks, Milsil. Appreciate you. Look at the icons, guys, and tell me that TNL doesn't have better icons than this. I mean, shit, World of Warcraft has better icons than that. Like, these are like AI-generated icons.
And the warrior barbarian class fighter, as they're called.
Says the guy that jerks off to a Dark Knight figurine. I would never jerk off to a Dark Knight figurine on stream. That's crazy. I don't even know how you can make that accusation.
Calling it. While the tab targeting seems to be much preferred for the ranged and caster classes. Speaking of classes, there are 6 archetypes in the game as of Alpha 2. From what I've seen, it looks like each of these has a strong identity with some interesting class abilities and lore behind them. We've got the Bard, Cleric, Fighter, Tank, Ranger, and the Mage. Pretty good feedback from pretty much all of them. The visuals have gotten progressively more visually interesting, partially due to their shift to Unreal Engine 5, and to coincide with visuals, the world, and the environment, it's a lot more.
This looks worse than Throne and Liberty. This looks worse than BDO too. Looks worse than Lost Ark for sure. Like
their Albo Yingle Cheer Dex 100. Have you seen the pre-alpha test of Invictus Defying Fate?
No, I have not.
Compare that to this game, Lamau.
All right, I'll take a look at it after this.
Are fleshed out and interesting as well. And I thought the same myself, like watching some of the recent videos for Ashes of Creation, specifically that most recent showcase of the Lionhold area, which is like the starter zone. I thought it looks cool, looks fleshed out, had some interesting points of interest there.
You can't tell me that this looks better than Throne and Liberty, bro. Like, this is like look at the character model. Lost Ark has better character models. BDO has better character models. TNL is better. Like, if we're going to compare it to those games,
interesting verticality, some cool like landscape stuff going on.
The far away
I think
stuff
the world
good.
looks good in terms of its visual presentation and the stuff that they're putting within it. And then one other big positive that pretty much each and every one of the content creators pointed to was the update cadence as a.
So Blue Dog kidnapped people to say they're going to eat him if they can't meet the number in there, and mind how many fried hamsters can you eat. That guy's a bot. Okay, and I just want to remind you, AI technology is just not there yet.
of recently, saying that in the past couple of months they have been updating the game at quite a high frequency, with patches coming out on a regular basis, fixing, improving, and adding things to the game. Now, it might be easy to write off these enthusiast channels because, hey, yes, they've got YouTube channels dedicated to covering an unreleased MMO that looks to be still at least 4 years from launch. So of course they're going to be positive. At the very least, they like the game enough to have channels dedicated to the game, right? But no, it wasn't all positives just because of that. We did get a fair bit of critique in these videos as well, mostly pointing to the fact that it's an alpha, and with that has all the expected alpha issues, which include bugs, glitches, performance, and a general lack of polish. The bugs are a big one from what I've seen, things just not working properly, that including quest, public events, NPCs bugging out, all of which seem to be still occurring on a regular basis. Performance and server stability issues are cropping up a lot as well, even in the recent test, which have a much smaller number of players than what we expect to be in the coming weeks. Performance and server stability
look at that
has still been an issue. Now, with that said, with the regular clips of updates mentioned in the positives, people have been saying that the performance and server stability has been getting better over time. I guess one question though is the performance and server issues smoothing out as there are less players, or because of the patches making back-end improvements? Time will certainly tell. Now,
if they're having trouble with this many people, even on Alpha 2, there is no way that the 10x amount of people that are going to play the live... Oh my god, dude, it's going to be... You're not going to be able to log in for 3 days.
One big negative, and this is going to, I think, get a lot of people who are potentially considering purchasing into these early tests, is the content. In terms of the actual amount of content in the game, the number of quests, the areas of points of interest, the places to explore, the dungeons, the world bosses, simply put, there's not much in the current build of the game that we're going to be playing shortly. In fact, it looks like in this alpha build, you're going to be spending a majority of your time just grinding mobs. There are quests in the game, they do exist, but they're...
Look at this. What are we talking about? Stop. Even for a rough draft Alpha 2, we're like, yeah, this is not good. Right? Remember when Throne of Liberty released their alpha? We were like, yeah, so no one's going to play that. That looks dog shit. And then they just like 180'd the game and then made it like way better. Yeah, that's what they need to do here.
Pretty lackluster in terms of the experience rewarded. That is, if they don't bug out in the process of you doing them, which apparently is happening. In fact, some are saying that in this test right now, in the Alpha 2 test, that it has even less content than Alpha 1. I don't know how that's possible, but I've seen some feedback that that is the case, and that was the test, mind you, from 3 years ago. In fact, one creator said that the game right now feels like much more of a survival game than a traditional theme park MMO in terms of the amount of structured content that's available for you. Now, to be fair, that's sort of the whole idea anyways, because the game is heavily modeled after ArcAge, and ArcAge was a blending of theme park and sandbox elements, and I presume this is going to be the way as well. It's just that right now it seems to lean more into the sandbox nature, in that you're making your own fun, because that guided fun isn't so much there currently.
I think that like a lot of people like myself are excited for like the systems in the game, like the seasons changing, being able to like world shape with events and stuff. And like that kind of like, and then like the housing and stuff that you have to compete with other players for, and then like build your house and stuff. That all looks really cool. Those systems look really cool, but I don't think any of that what I just mentioned is actually in the alpha. Maybe a little bit of it, but not the larger, like it's a third of like one biome.
And then one point I also saw brought up quite often, which might be a good or bad thing depending on the type of player you are, is that the game is not solo friendly. Not at all. For the most part, you are going to want to group up with people to do a lot of things. If you're hoping to level efficiently and grind efficiently, you can play solo. It's just that you're probably going to be out quite a bit behind players who are working in groups. This is a group-focused game. The level of difficulty and
I'm so looking forward to this game's release, and it's going to be completely contentless, with a biome of having 1 to 2 monsters each, and a total of 4 quests and progressions locked behind daily quests. Hey, at least you'll be able to turn random critters into mounts and pretend you're a Pokemon master. You've been sued by Nintendo. That won't be a feature of the game. Have a nice day. Okay.
terms of how easily it is for solo players to kill mobs, to clear content, to get things done. It is tailored and aimed at being better in a group. So again, positive or negative depending on the type of player, but that's the kind of game they're trying to make. This isn't like a thing. It's not like they were trying to make a solo friendly game and they've ended up not delivering on that and have a group focused game. No, they're trying to make a group focused game. It's just, again, something that you should be aware of, because whether or not people like to admit it, it seems like a lot of the MMO audience has kind of shifted in the direction of wanting to have more solo ability in their MMOs. I'll just say personally, I can be pretty antisocial even in video games. I don't always like grouping up with people and chatting with people, but I still see the
based. You still want to be in that medieval fantasy setting. A lot of people like this. This is why people like BDO. You want to be in that medieval fantasy setting, and you want to be able to play by yourself for a while, right? But you also want the opportunity to play with other players too, in a meaningful way. That's why people like Lost Ark.
The appeal, and I actually enjoy when MMOs push you in that direction. I've thoroughly enjoyed games that have that focus. I will still might go off in my own section and do my solo thing for a good chunk of time, but I like when there's content and hurdles in the way that makes you work with other people. And I'm just okay with being behind the people who are grouping up if I want to solo. Like, that's just how it is, right? Now, probably one of the most critical videos that I saw from one of these enthusiast channels came from Rive Genesis. Beyond echoing many of the above concerns, he also really leaned into just how little game they have to show, or rather how little actual content they are presenting to the public after having...
Normally you have an alpha 2, it's got most of the things that you need in the game, and you're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna still flesh this out, and like we're not completely done. We'll add NPCs and quests and things to do, but like, here's the world, go walk around in it, show us what bugs we have. No, this isn't even remotely close to a rough draft. This is literally just like a city with like a dungeon to run. Like, that's
having spent 8 years in development. Now, although he was the most critical throughout his coverage, he also had a lot of positive things to say, and generally it seems like he is still interested and planning to play the game. And also, his criticisms came across as pretty fair to me. It's clear that he's played a bit of the game, and I don't think he's wrong in many of his assessments. I think in particular, his discussion of the development timeline and how much longer we're expecting it to take, I think he's spot on. Even myself, just like perceiving this game casually from the outside up until recently, where I decided to check out some content and see what's going on, even just looking at streams occasionally every couple of months, I was like, yeah, it seems like this game is still at least 3 to 4 years away. And it seems like...
I think 3 to 4 years is optimistic, if I'm being honest. I think 3 to 4 years is really optimistic. I'll be lucky to have this come out before I'm 40 years old. Like, literally 8 years. I think that 5 years, we might be looking at a tentative release. Like, not even joking. Like, maybe 5 years.
Like, that might still in fact be the case. Now, if you're interested in seeing the full coverage from any of these creators, I've linked all referenced videos below. Highly recommend checking any of them out. These are people who have been actively following and playing the game. And yeah, for the most part, they all had generally positive things to say, with a lot of the same regular, consistent negative points of feedback. That being that there are quite a lot of bugs, performance and server stability, despite improving, still isn't great. There is a general lack of content, and again, the group focus, but that's not necessarily a negative. That's intentional. That's by design. So yeah, check out their videos. That's all linked below. The
lack of content would be forgivable if there was more of the world to explore. You know what I mean? Like, they can fill in NPCs, add some quests and all that stuff, like, after the fact, but like, it should feel pretty finished. It's just not polished at all. You know what I mean? Like, you need to polish it up. Then beta, you're like, okay, it's kind of ready to launch. What's the feedback here? Oh, or do we need to pivot? You know what I mean? And then you should be launching it. Like, this should be a rough draft. And the idea of a rough draft is that you have all, like, when you were in high school, and I made this comparison earlier, a rough draft was basically the final version. Okay, like, you turn it to the teacher, she gave you some corrections, she crossed out some errors and shit. You would just change the spelling errors, move some words around, turn it in, boom, that's the final draft. Okay, but you had it. If it was required to be 5 pages, you had it at 5 pages. Ashes of Creation is requiring by itself 30-page essay, and they have 3 pages written for their rough draft. That's why people are upset. Zuto, thanks for the gifted sub on a Hunter there.
Conversation in places like Reddit has leaned a bit more generally negative. What a shocker. Take this quote, for example. Apparently, only around half of the Riverlands, one zone out of the many that were promised, is aesthetically completed, and the zone is pretty empty as far as content goes. Some are saying it's as bad as Pantheon. Okay. They're really coming out with the big guns here, hurling out the major insults. Similar here is this quote that says, most of the complaints I've noticed come across my feed have been people expecting the game to be around 50% complete, when in actuality, it's only around 20% complete. Most people thought the game was closer to being completed, but with the current...
The bar was low, and they got under it. You know what I mean? And Stephen J. Sharif said, hand me that shovel, baby.
State of the game, I think there's concerns the development could still take many more years. I mean, I don't think we even have to speculate about this. We're entering Alpha 2. It is still going to take many more years. They are launching a test for the game that only has a portion of a single zone when they promised many, many more zones in the final iteration and many more systems and features that they are just not comfortable with presenting to the public for testing's sake. We're obviously still years away. That's without question. And then a follow-up to that was someone saying that they have one single biome, map/zone, at 20% completion.
I was overselling a third. It's actually at 20%.
The exact percent, whatever. They were supposed to be 18 biomes in the game. Almost none of the announced systems have been developed in any way whatsoever. Everything is in a worse state than Alpha 1. You know, I don't know whether or not we can assess whether or not any of these systems have been developed or not. They probably have in some capacity, but at least they've not been developed to the point where they're being
16 times the detail. It's an old meme, sir, but it checks out.
Rolled into these builds that we're about to pay to test. I've already played Ashes of Creation myself, having taken part in alpha testing a few years back. And looking at that content that I made about 3 years ago, although...
Oh my god. Yeah, that looks... Oh.
The game was lacking content. It was very much still an alpha, as it still is today. Yeah. Even that being the case, I did enjoy my time. My ultimate takeaway was that while the game still obviously had a ways to go, I liked the general framework of what was there. Some key highlights being that I enjoyed that early iteration of combat. Apparently that has only gotten better since. I thought the performance was good, both the local performance of the game running on my PC, but also the server latency. All of that was pretty smooth when I played. I also liked the world. I liked exploring it. I enjoyed the scale of everything.
It's gotten a lot better, just not $20 million better. You know what I'm saying? Like for the amount, the tens of millions that have been invested in Ashes of Creation, we don't even know how much they're making off of Alpha 2. My guess is many millions of dollars. People expect more. There was 10 million up front. 8 years ago, there's 10 million. This is what you got for 10 million. $10 million got you 20% of one biome. Okay, at that rate, to get 18 biomes done, you're looking at, what, 50 million per biome times 18? Is it looking like a scam yet? Because we're almost at like $900 million.
I saw some interesting points of interest and environments, and the whole player-built cities were cool, that even such an early iteration of it that we saw in that alpha test. Funny thing though, going back and rewatching that video, near the beginning of it, when discussing the game's current state, I said at the time, it is clear that it's still very early in development. My guess is it probably needs another 2 to 3 years minimum, just based on what we saw this weekend. And what's funny is...
He said 2 to 3 years from there.
I got a bit of pushback for that statement, but here we are, a full 3 years later, just about to enter Alpha 2 with the launch.
You could say the exact same thing about Alpha 2 today.
On the distant horizon to be determined. So yeah, turns out it was correct. In fact, I'm going to go out on a further limb and say, from everything I've seen leading into this upcoming test, looks like they're probably still another 2 to 3 years away. In fact, I'm going to just push it out further and say they're probably 3, 4, or 5 years away from like a full 1.0 actual release of the game.
5 years
That's
minimum.
how it seems anyway. So in terms of the Alpha 2 testing, here's how it's going to go. Phase 1 is starting October 25th. Now, that's only for prior testers. Like if you bought into prior testing or you were a Kickstarter backer, you can start playing later this week. But if you are buying these Wave 1 keys that they're selling,
I'm personally okay with waiting 5 more years, but that's just me. And that's totally fine. We're all going to wait 5 more years. We're all going to play it when it comes out. The question is, are you going to pay? So it's 8 years so far, and you're talking about what? Optimistically, $20 million. Okay. Are you going to pay another $15 million as a player base to something that looks like this in 5 years? Right? Are we going to wait for it? Absolutely. As a player, yeah, I'm waiting to play it for sure. Absolutely. But like, are you going to invest in it before it comes out? That's the question.
Selling right now for $120. You actually don't get access until 2 weeks from then, starting on November the 8th. Now, in this whole phase, they're going to be doing weekend tests. The plan is to run the servers from Friday to Sunday. So 3-day test with 4 days off, and then another 3 days, and then 4 days off. And the whole focus here is on the technical side of things. We're talking the scalability, the stability, the performance, and the progression on these servers. And then phase 2 is happening 2 months from now, starting on December 20th. At this point, they're going to be going from 3 days of testing to, they said, 5+
May 1st, 2025.
days of testing.
Test goals, expand content and features. This is what I love about, they're geniuses. Honestly, Steven and the development team are geniuses. Just be intentionally vague and imply a lot more than you're going to be able to deliver, and they will just throw money at you. You know what I mean? Yeah, we're just going to expand content and features. Well, what the fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? They can very easily deliver on that. They don't have to worry about false advertising, but people can wish for the world. You know what I mean?
So like 5 or 6 days per week, the servers are going to be available with 1 to 2 days downtime. In this, they're going to start...
Most transparent devs address things and listen to the community, though. I would say that currently the most transparent devs in the MMO market are... Throne of Liberty's devs are like, we give them feedback, and the next week it's already patched into the game. It's already been developed and patched into the game. It's literally insane. That being said, Ashes of Creation does an exceptional job of listening to the community. The problem is it's almost too much, right? They legitimately allow the community to steer their game. And it's kind of like, do you guys remember that in the old days where they used to let the Twitch community play Pokemon? Where you could like put a command in the chat and like the character would move or interact with things. And like the idea was to like beat the Pokemon game. And it took Twitch like months to actually get to the end of it because the community could never decide on what they necessarily wanted it to do. Okay, it's the same thing with Ashes of Creation. Will we stumble into a finished product eventually? Absolutely. But like if you're taking too much player feedback, it can hurt the development of your game. It can. Like you want to take player feedback, but like it's almost too much for Ashes because it keeps them like spinning their wheels in circles instead of pushing content and development forward.
We're adding more content, things like node advancement systems, working on the economy and the vassaling system.
Like
and then
spinning
phase
wheels
3
in the mud
is
right
starting in May. On May the 1st is when they have it tentatively listed. And at that point, the plan is to have the servers up and running 24/7. This is when they're really going to start expanding the content and features of the game, or so that's what they're saying as of their current roadmap. Now, after...
Yeah, I don't know about that. This is the problem BDO has too. No, the problem BDO has is actually the opposite of Ashes of Creation. BDO has developers that refuse to listen to anyone other than themselves for any reason. And even when they do take community feedback, they have to put their spin on it to make it look like it came from them because they're egotistical. In Ashes of Creation, they try to do exactly what the community tells them, and you have like a million people telling you to do a million things, and then you end up never pushing development forward. It's kind of like the opposite.
After all of this here, I will say that I am genuinely looking forward to playing this game again. I'm going into this alpha knowing that the game is incomplete, that it is going to have a lot of issues, and that the servers are probably going to be a total mess, maybe this entire first weekend even. But once that irons out, I'm excited to just play what's currently here. At the same time, it's...
They said they'd fund it with their own money. Why lie? You already answered your own money. But why would money? Okay, they absolutely did say, okay, we have 10 million in startup funds. I remember Stephen J. Sharif saying this. We have 10 million in startup funds. That should more than get us through the development of the game. And if it takes any more than that, I will personally fund the project. Not even joking. Those words were said. Okay, and here we are, and you are still funding his project. That's why I criticize this so much.
Very much an alpha like it was 3 years ago. It's just a a further iteration of that alpha, right? Apparently, they only have roughly a fourth of a single zone of content. And I mean, come on, clearly it's still a long way from being done. That seems unarguable. If I were to give an honest estimate, at this point, I'm guessing at least 3 to 4 years away from that official 1.0 launch. But it will apparently be playable that whole time.
Did you buy alpha access? No, I did not. We're going to watch other people that bought the alpha access so that I don't have to spend $700 to play a game that's 5 years from launch. And that's being optimistic.
I'm from first these weekends that starts later this week, and then most of the week, and then coming up early next year, it's going to be up and running 24/7. So I guess the question at this point is, how frequently is Intrepid going to keep updates rolling? And based on that or otherwise, are people going to stay interested in the game for the next 3, 4 to 5 years until that 1.0 release?
They will absolutely string people along. They're going to pay 120 people's salary. 120 Americans are going to have, or wherever they're from, are going to have their salaries completely paid for the next X amount of years until the game launches. It's not even a question. People are just going to keep throwing money at the game. And that's why, again, to me, it looks like a scam.
And that brings me to another serious question, and that comes down to the funding. Now, I know this always gets hand-waved with everyone.
Having the alpha access, I have to say it's been extremely rough, especially getting into the game itself. However, I do say that it's been extremely fun, even though, in your words, it's released. Yeah, so I mean, like, of course it's going to be fun. It's a new MMO, right? Like, it's just a new MMO release, but, like, it's just, yeah, we'll see. In a month, are we still going to be interested in playing the alpha too, right?
One saying the CEO, he's self-funding the game. He's going to totally take care of everything. But I mean, hey, they are selling $120 alpha access keys. Let me tell you,
guys, I can't emphasize this. I've spent $600 for this game. This is my point. Everyone that's playing the game has spent typically around at least $1,000. At minimum, a couple $100 in most cases for a game that is in alpha 2. Guys, you don't even pay that money for how much was Wukong? Like $60? What are we talking about? Like, we're talking about spending half of $1,000 or north of $1,000 to get enough content that is going to occupy you for, yeah, sure, it's fun for a few days. And then you're basically just done with it. This is part of the reason they're releasing it like, oh, you got to buy multiple months of alpha access. Like, yeah, because they knew that they want waves of players coming in to test their game, because the first players that play test their game are going to be finished with it within a month or so. Like,
I've played a lot of MMOs. I have participated in a lot of alpha tests. This is the first time doing so has cost me $120. If anything, most companies...
It's your choice, though, whether you support the project or not. While that is true, I do believe that Ashes of Creation, I give them a really hard time because I think that they're just being disingenuous with people. Like, fundamentally, they're just lying to their player base on what they're delivering, what they're working on, and systems that they're going to have and be playable in the game in a reasonable amount of time. Like, they're just literally lying to people. Like, all that bunny hopping and showing, like, the residences and stuff and how, like, player housing and stuff was going to work the desert biome. Apparently, like, they teased that in a trailer in, like, 2016. Like, oh, my God, he's going through a snail through the desert? That's insane. You know, oh, my God, it stood up. 4-legged snail? What? You know, like, oh, yeah, by the way, 8 years later, we just started the desert. We're like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like, they're just lying to people, and that's where the problem is. If they were being truthful with everyone, with where they are, actually, like, and what they're really working on, not what they're theorizing working on, just to get people excited, it would feel like less of a scam. But because they're genuinely being disingenuous with everyone, and talking about things and showing things that aren't actually being developed, they're getting people to invest in their company, in their game, and not delivering on promises. And that is the definition of a scam. If people want to invest money into a project, you're absolutely right. That's their prerogative. But you can't lie to the consumer. That's illegal.
Pay people.
And technically, they haven't done anything illegal because it's still an alpha 2. They could still technically deliver it. But, like, that's cope, right? Like, that's like
QA specifically to test the alpha and early iterations of their game. But hey, when you have a passionate, dedicated fan base who are starved for a good game in a floundering genre, you can charge them. I get it, right? On top of all of these FOMO-driven limited time cosmetics that they've sold for Ashes of Creation, a game that is still, again, likely 4+ years away from release. And however we might want to frame these as to why they're doing it, and they have a long list of reasons why, it seems a good portion of it is to raise funding, right? Because of course it is. Hey, Ashes has spent 8 years in development, and I know that the head of the company, he's a rich guy, but it takes a lot of money to pay 150 developers their yearly salaries on top of any other incurred expenses. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars each and every single year.
Yeah, guys, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, realistically, they had 10 million up front. They're probably at least 60 million in the hole. This is where we're at.
Easily. So they got to make money and they want to stay independent, and that's a big motivation behind the crazy prices on the alpha access. It's more to support and less to test, but either way, they're asking for that money so they can fund the game, of course, right? They want to stay free from investors and publisher influence. That is part of the reasoning behind all of that, and so that's how we result in where we are. The fact is, though, bottom line, as of today, we have yet to see a Kickstarter MMO successfully released. There are a lot of promising things about Ashes of Creation, though, and for that reason, I'm looking forward to jumping in again. I expect I will have some fun, but whether or not this is going to buck that Kickstarter MMO curse, well, check in about 4 years from now. We should probably know by then. And hey, I'm hopeful that they pull it off. I'm going to be playing this Alpha 2, if not this upcoming weekend, then at least the following one, so likely expect some additional coverage from me in the coming weeks here. But that is all for today. A little update for you on Ashes of Creation. Again, I know it's not actually launching, but it's here. It's going to be playable. There's no NDA, and that's the other good thing. Watch the streams, watch the YouTube videos. This is going to give you all a good sense of whether or not it's something that you should buy into if you want to check it out right now, or if you should wait the 3, 4, or 5 more years until it's finally done and it has more than a fraction of a single zone. And in all fairness, that single zone is massive. I think I saw quotes like it's the entire size of New Worlds. Taking shots at Amazon. It's like the one zone that they have only a fraction of finished.
That's a lie. There's just no shot, bro.
Now is like the entire size of all of New World. So that's good. Mass doesn't make a good game. What's in it? What's the content? What are we doing? Is that interesting enough to keep us engaged for more than a weekend test? We'll know very soon. You'll know very soon. All that content and information will.
All right, let's find out, because we're going to watch some Alpha 2 here. This is the Forest Gaming video right here. I strongly suggest you go support him. He's a really big YouTuber in just like the gaming space in general. So like I respect his opinion on stuff.